Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to Ambitious Casual. My name's Rob, and today I'm joined with the editor-in-chief at PlayStation Lifestyle, Chandler Wood. How you doing, man?
Not too bad, you know. It's been some crazy days of PlayStation news coming out
It has been.
lately. There's just all the acquisitions and everything.
Yeah, dude.
It's a fun time to be a PlayStation fan, definitely.
It has been. Before we kind of get into the whole the meat of what this entire video is, I do want to know just real quick right off the bat. Obviously, PlayStation wasn't at E3, uh, but it's interesting that we're getting like just little sprinkles here and there from them. Do you think this is all kind of leading to like a huge state of play, or do you think we're going to see a huge showcase at like a PSX in the winter?
I think they have to do something. I've been thinking they have to do something July or August, or it just feels like it's been too long since Sony's put together a big show.
Yeah,
I mean, they did what last year? They had the PS5 showcase,
yeah,
and then I think right around PS5 launch they had a similar showcase,
right.
and then they really haven't done anything big. They've had some, smatterings of state of plays here and there, but nothing big. And then they just keep tossing out these announcements like, "Oh, Ghost of Tsushima director's cut," and you're like, "What?
Exactly.
What? Why? Why are you just throwing this out there? Oh, here's the PSVR 2 controllers, by the way, and
Yeah,
we're making the headset, and it's in a
yeah.
blog post that's like 200 words long." And so yeah, I feel like they've got to be prepping for something big. And you know, is that an August thing? Is it a PSX in winter? I don't know. I really feel like the pandemic kind of killed what they were intending to do, which was a lot more in-person stuff.
Right.
Because we kind of saw that last year when they opted out of E3, what was it, E3 2020, before it was officially canceled.
Yeah.
They had said, "Oh, we're going to be doing a lot more in-person fan events and things spread throughout the year instead of like a dedicated E3 event." And then, of course, pandemic comes along, and they're one of the first ones to say, "All right, we're not hitting show floors at all. We're we're stepping away from that."
Yeah, yeah,
Um, so yeah, I feel like something's got to be coming along. They've got to have something to announce, right?
yeah. And what's I think what's interesting is that I think around the time when this whole Sean Layden thing and Jim Ryan conspiracies were going on between why did he leave, and was it because of just disagreements, and then around that time obviously that's when the pandemic hit, and then it's like PlayStation's been super silent. So I feel like everyone's been kind of thinking, oh, PlayStation's just going to be super silent now because we just lost somebody and they're going a completely different direction. And I think it's just the unfortunate thing of the pandemic hits. PlayStation doesn't want to be at E3 anymore. They kind of are just they're in this place where they kind of earned it, where they knocked it out of the park with PS4, and they're like, hey, we don't need help from anybody, we got this. And they're being very interesting with the way, like you said, the last showcase that we got was like that PS5 showcase around the time when the PS5 came out. And after that, the biggest thing that we got was literally the Horizon Forbidden West, like showing off of what the game was. That was not really state of play, but it really wasn't anything at all. So I do
Yeah,
agree that something has to be happening soon. So with that, with all that in regard, and with PlayStation being the center of all this, I'm gonna make a transition into the reason why you're here. Now, Chandler, I have you on the show here. I wanted to talk to you because there was a couple weeks ago. I forgot exactly how long ago it was, but I saw Colin Moriarty retweeted your story going over a whole breakdown of all the different things that was going on regarding Blue Box Game Studios and their game titled Abandon. And so I remember Abandon being shown off. It was like a PlayStation blog post. I remember seeing it, and I was
yeah,
like,
back in April.
yes, back in April. And I remember seeing it. I didn't think too much of it. One, I'm not a journalist. So I don't have this keen eye of trying to look into things too much. I see it, I pop out, boom, I'm done. But
Yeah, cool
when
announcement. Does it interest me? Does it not? Yeah.
e- exactly. So when you first saw the PlayStation blog post in April about Abandon, what did you think of it when you first saw it?
Oh man, I'm trying to remember now because I don't think I was even the one who wrote that up originally for our site. One of my
Okay.
news writers came across it, wrote it up. It was a thing that was thrown up there. I look at everything that goes up on the site, and so I have a at least ancillary awareness of the stories and the things that are going on, but I
Yeah.
don't necessarily like look too deeply into them. And so yeah, it was just kind of like, oh, interesting. This Blue Box Game Studio, it's a new game studio. They're doing a PS5 exclusive partnership with Sony. That's not that unusual. You know, tons of indies have some kind of partnerships with Sony, which I mean that almost goes into a little bit some of the more recent tete-a-tetes that have been going on with
Oh yeah.
what indie developers have been saying about them. So that adds a
Oh
whole
yeah.
nother interesting layer on things. But
For sure. For sure.
yeah, so I was just kind of like, okay, that's cool. And then I did see some whispers going around with comments kind of throwing out, oh, I wonder if this is secretly a Silent Hill game. I wonder if it's secretly a Kojima game, because that talk was already starting to go on,
Right.
even
Right.
back in April.
Right.
That talk was starting to push forward, but I don't think people were really taking it seriously at that point. It was a
Right.
couple of people that were maybe linking the two things, and it just seemed like a convenient link, because around the same time, I think it was March or so, was when there were some rumors of Kojima working on Silent Hill. And so it just seemed like this grab, like this reach.
Right.
Oh, we're grabbing onto this thing, and maybe this is part of this other story.
Right.
Didn't think much of it.
Yeah, and I remember when I first saw it. When you go back and watch it, and anyone can just on YouTube search up Abandoned Blue Box Game Studios. It's really weird. One, it didn't look good. It's like running at
No.
maybe 20 frames per second, not even. It just looks horrible. But the fact that it was on the PlayStation blog, to me, I was just like, maybe this is just like the beginning of an introduction of something that's coming in the future. I don't know. Didn't think of it. And I totally agree with you. The fanboys for PlayStation are unbelievable in regards to the fact that we've been talking about this whole Konami, Silent Hill, Kojima thing for ever since PT. Ever since PT, people have been dreaming for this to just somehow conjure back up and happen again. And so we take whatever we can to get there. And what that leads to is recently, and I forgot about all this. And I know that rumors have been circulating around Kojima, Silent Hills, PlayStation, working with Konami to utilize the IP. They will front the money, utilize Kojima either in a directorial way or as an overseer, different kinds of theories and things going around. And when I saw the article that you posted, kind of with that whole breakdown, with you kind of gathering all this information that's been thrown around all over the place, and you said in the article you kind of were noticing some things on your own. Is that correct? As you were putting the article together?
Yeah, so it was I started writing it because what was that? Oh, it was the starts with S ends with L tweet, right?
Correct.
That kind of like sparked everything up again.
Oh yeah.
And then they denied it was Silent Hill. And so that was the story, and that was kind of the story that a lot of other places were running with, was, oh, Blue Box Game Studios denies after teasing tweet that this is Silent Hill. And being from a smallerish site, we're kind of I'm always trying to approach stories maybe from a slightly different angle, because
Absolutely.
you've read it 10 times on 10 other sites, on IGN, on GameSpot, on all these other sites. Like, how can I bring something maybe a little bit different to the table? And so I went into it kind of going, okay, I'm going to add a little flavor, a little context to this, and say, oh, they denied this, but like here's some of the things that are outlining it. Just wanted to kind of put it out on the table.
Yeah.
Began as something where I really didn't mean for it to turn into what it did.
Yeah.
And I think it reads like that as you read through the post too, where you can, the start kind of starts off more like a news story, and more, and then you can just almost feel my own
Absolutely.
spiral into madness as I
Oh,
get
yeah.
to the end of that article, and I'm like, oh, and holy crap this, and holy crap that, and I found this, and I found that, and my brain, like, I sent it to my wife after I wrote it, and I was like, okay, you have to read this, like, and she got done reading it, and she's like, that's amazing, like, I
Yeah.
feel your level of crazy as you fell down into this just pit of, and my article published, I feel like in some ways this may be taking too much credit for things, because obviously people were already looking into things, and the conspiracy was already starting, and it was already really going. There were certain things that I dug into a little deeper and found myself, and but I had published my article before a lot of other people started covering the conspiracy side of it. They just covered the Silent Hill or the starts with S ends with L tweet.
Right. You were like the
And so
hub, man. You were like, I felt like you were the
yeah,
hub for all the
I
information.
it was other than that Reddit thread, which the Reddit thread ended up pulling exact quotes from my piece. So that
Hmm.
was how I knew they used my article, because they used my exact writing, like sentence for sentence, um, in it. Which, with something like this, yes, it just gets beyond your control. I'm not gonna go around and try to be like, well, IGN, you sourced the Reddit thread, so but the Reddit thread sourced me, so you should source me. And
Right.
it's kind of like, at some point you have to kill your darlings. You have to let it go,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it just got out of control. But like, that was the day before even the Blue Box Conspiracy subreddit was created. Um, all of that,
Yeah.
So I feel like in a lot of ways, maybe I didn't kickstart it myself, but in a lot of ways I helped fuel the fire that became what it became
Mm. Mm.
with that article. And I was a believer. I want to say that. When I went through all that stuff, I covered the original, the Phantom Pain, Moby Dick Studios and Joachim Magrin and all that
Oh
stuff
yeah.
back in 2014, 2013, whenever it was. And so it just felt the same. It was that
Yeah.
fun, exciting mystery. And I watched a Kind of Funny segment where, Blessing and Greg talked about the same thing. And
Yeah.
Greg got to the end of that segment and he was like, you know what? I want to believe. I want to
Yeah.
believe. And that
Exactly.
that was kind of the same feeling I came out of it with, where it was just kind of a gentle belief, where, like, if it's not true, whatever, but it's fun
Exactly.
to believe it.
Exactly. And I remember watching that segment as well, and I was listening to a couple other people talk about the whole thing, and so many people were on the exact same side of I want to believe. I want to believe this is real because this is kind of what everyone's been wanting. Obviously, like I said before, this goes all the way back to PT, and kind of digging in a bit on what you were saying in regards to Metal Gear Solid 5. Around that time, first off, I want to just let it be known I'm a huge Hideo Kojima fan. I like his work. He
Oh
is
yeah,
really good developer, director, and he's crazy, but I trust his vision, and he's
but in
always
the
been
best way.
absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah.
And so when Metal Gear Solid 5 was coming around, and the whole Phantom Pain conspiracies and that kind of stuff was happening, I was still, man. Around that time, I was close to like getting out of my parents' house, and I was gonna be living on my own, married, and moved away. But I was still with my siblings at the time. I'm the oldest of 8 kids, so I had other brothers underneath me that we all like just hyped out over and geeked out over Hideo Kojima. So when the Phantom Pain happened, we were just munching on all that stuff, man. We're over all of it. And so when this article came up and it was going over the whole Blue Box conspiracy stuff, I felt like this flashback to when I was a kid with Metal Gear Solid 5. And that's kind of the reason why everyone wanted to believe it, because they're like, Hideo Kojima did this once. He can most definitely do this again. And a lot of people probably
Yeah.
believed he was gonna use the same tactics for the Phantom Pain with a supposed reveal for the Silent Hill. So
Well, and you dive back into Kojima's past too. I mean, you go even as far back as like Metal Gear Solid 2. You look into that, and his entire reason for advertising it as Solid Snake, and then having the entire switch to you playing as Raiden, and all of that, was
right.
this. It was this broader meta commentary on the way information, like, even that was a theme within the game itself, but even outside of the game, his purpose for doing that was a broader meta commentary on how information travels and misinformation travels, and all of that kind of stuff. So even going back as far as that, not
Yeah.
not just the Joachim Magrin stuff and the Phantom Pain, but it felt like there was almost this theme to the Blue Box stuff that could have played into that as well. And
Yeah.
he can kind of come out and say, ha, see, misinformation travels around because of this and this. And I mean, regardless, even if it doesn't turn out to be him, like, it's still a very good meta commentary on that whole level of things, and the way, the direction this whole thing went.
Absolutely.
So it's interesting,
Absolutely.
whether he had a part in it or not, he's still writing meta commentaries almost.
Exactly. And that was the funny thing when you go back to his interview with Jeff Keighley for the Summer Game Fest. Even he was kind of like, I want to be careful with what I write and what I do because I'm tired of predicting things. And he's kind of he's aware of it. You know, he
Like
knows it.
Death Stranding, that was
Exactly. Exactly.
amazing game. I absolutely loved it. I know
Oh
it's a
yeah.
very divisive game, but that one's like spoke to me a lot. And then having the pandemic come right after that, it's like,
Oh
wow,
yeah.
it was very prescient.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And I think what's interesting is what's funny is that a lot of my questions that I had were still around this whole time when things were still up in the air. And as of now, things have changed a bit in our stances on where we're at with all of this. And so, dialing it back, Blue Box Game Studios, they as just an entity themselves. It's interesting when you looked at some of the facts. There was there is some obvious coincidences, and then there's obviously some where people are really stretching it out to kind of find that information that they really want. I think
Hmm.
I think some of the coincidences that to me that I'm still kind of like, hmm, is the name. I think that in particular, the fact that his name translated through just Google Translate. Again, that's not like the definitive translator of all.
Yeah, yeah. There's some deeper stuff there where people are like, well, actually, but it's like, yeah, well, if the basic person goes to Google and translates those words,
Exactly.
Turkish to Japanese, it's a direct translation.
Exactly. And I think to me there's that and there's just one or two things here or there where I'm kind of like, man, if these are just legit just coincidences, this is a weird world. This is a weird world we live in, you know? And it really just to me I'm kind of like, okay, well then if anything to me, I feel so bad. Well, I feel a couple of emotions for the studio. One, uh God bless them. I hope that they have everything that they need because I don't know if they know what they prepared themselves for. Uh, and then on top of that, they kind of did set themselves up a bit. And again, I feel that way. And I want to know what you think. I know that when they had the tweet, which kind of sparked everything back up again, which was the name of the game starting with an S and an L. I'm not someone who has the dictionary like memorized, you know? But to go that far, to know that your game
Well,
looked like PT, to know that your game was kind of giving off these, things, and then that.
and he was well aware of the comparisons before because they had to tweet before, like sometime in April or May or something, like well before this, that no, we are not Hideo Kojima. We're not associated with Silent Hill or Konami. So they knew that then. And then when they
Exactly.
come back and they say, oh, we did that tweet because we weren't aware that people thought that of us. And it's like, no, no, we have the receipts right here. Like there's a
Exactly.
tweet where you're denying that you're this. So you were aware to some extent. And
Exactly.
then I think the explanation for the SNL, S, it starts with S, ends with L,
Yeah.
tweet was that it was supposed to stand for survival, but like survival's also not the name of the game.
Exactly.
That's a theme of the game.
Exactly.
But then there's also the question that some of that may be just lost in translation. Like there's a lot of these things that maybe seem like there's some maybe English isn't their first or even I say there, but there's also some indication that maybe Hasan is the only person at Blue Box Game Studios
Right.
regardless.
Right. Right. Right.
Um, but isn't his, you know, initial first language, and some things get lost in translation in terms of where he's writing out something and he doesn't mean exactly what he's writing out there, and
Right.
so then people pick up on it and
Right. And I think what's funny is even every single time they would come out and say, "We're not a part of, we're not Kojima. This is not Silent Hills." Everyone wants to point back to when Moby Dick Studios did the same thing to the Phantom Pain, and they're like, "Well, you're doing the same thing because you did that before." So no matter what they did, the moment that the shot was fired, it was kind of like they're done. And now I think with all this immense pressure on them, it obviously led to, I have to say, the delay of this application. It had to. If they, do you think or no?
I honestly think it was always going to be delayed all
Hmm.
along.
Okay.
So I don't know if you read it, but I want to say it was maybe late last week or early this week. I can't remember when I finished writing it up. It might have been early this week. Time's really weird right now, but
Oh yeah.
um, yeah, I think it was early this week that I published it. And it was basically kind of chronicling my my journey through the madness, right? And going through, I think I called it, uh, it doesn't actually matter, or it doesn't matter,
I have it pulled up right now. Yeah.
the madness of the Blue Box conspiracy.
Yes.
And it chronicled how um, the night of my anniversary, my 10th anniversary in mid June, right? Or
Congrats.
the morning of. Thank you. um, it's it's 1:20 in the morning, and I'm sitting there and I'm on my phone and I'm on the Blue Box Conspiracy subreddit, like looking at these things, looking at like you were saying, that the stretches, the tiny little things where people are like, well, somehow I looked into the DMV and I got Hasan's license plate, and his license plate is these letters, which relates to this, which if you translate it to Turkish and then back to Slovakian, suddenly it's the name of an obscure character from Silent Hill 2, so this is Silent Hill.
Yeah.
And you're just like, none of this matters. And the point, this is a long post. It's 2,400 words, and I go into a lot in it about kind of my ongoing theories, where I stand now, which I'm sure we'll talk a little bit more about here too. But my ultimate point of the whole thing was that none of this matters, because it's not an ARG where the community needs to figure something out. That regardless, at the end of the day, even if it is Kojima and Silent Hills, that we'll get that answer, because games are meant to be marketed. And so if the fans don't figure that out, they're not just going to go, oh, well, you didn't figure it out, so we're not going to market it. Like, it's meant to be marketed to the fans.
Exactly.
So we're going to get an answer as to what this game is, who's behind it, all of that, regardless of what it is, and none of digging up those small, tiny things and letting it consume your whole life even mattered. And it was like, knowing that I was going away for the weekend too. That was a Friday morning, at 1:20 on a Friday morning. That was that, and I was going away for the weekend, and coming to that realization just allowed me to like put down my phone and go, you know what? I get to go away for the weekend and not care about this, and that is the most wonderful thing right now.
Yeah, absolutely. And that leads in perfectly, because I read your article today, and it's very interesting. And I have a lot of things in regards to what you wrote, because like you just said right now, one of the things I have highlighted is that you wrote, games aren't meant to be hidden. They're meant to be marketed to the public. And I kind of want to link that, because something that I saw around the past week, and I couldn't save it because she has since deleted it, but I know Rebecca Valentine tweeted out a reasoning for, or she very vague, because Twitter doesn't allow you to be as thorough as you would like to be.
Yeah, and also sometimes you want to be vague because you don't want to attract certain people that may dogpile on some things like that.
Absolutely. And she posted something about how this whole situation regarding just conspiracies not being very forward, not being honest, affects journalism. And since then, Imran Khan, who is, I believe, editor-in-chief at Fanbyte, he has since written something, and I kind of want to read it real quick, and I want to see where you're coming from, because you're a journalist. I don't understand this. When I see this kind of stuff, to me, I'm like, this is awesome, dude. This is a huge puzzle. We're all working together to figure this out. But I'm looking at it in the eyes of a fan, from the eyes of somebody who, I won't take this stuff way too out of context. If it's not what it is, I'm not going to go on Twitter and just completely complain and send death threats or whatever to people. I wouldn't do that. To me, I see these things, I'm like, oh, these are little fun crumbs. And I'm like, this is, to me, in my mind, I'm like, this is clever marketing. But I want to read real quick what Imran Khan wrote. He wrote in an article on Fanbyte, and he says, the thing these people want, the big surprise, the major reveal, the full making of publications that reported on the assuredly fake video game in earnest, is not a thing that happens these days. There's just too many ways to root out the deception. Sony as a publisher and marketer absolutely knows better than to outright lie to the press in order to market a game, which does immense ethical damage to an already somewhat acrimonious relationship between press and publisher. In a situation where AAA developers did want to maintain some kind of illusion about what their game really is, it wouldn't be a battle between evidence versus plausible explanations. It would be an absence of enough information to say anything at all. And so, Chandler Wood, editor-in-chief of PlayStation Lifestyle. How does something like this kind of marketing, obviously Blue Box Game Studios is utilizing this to market their game. How does this affect you all as a journalist? Because the many thousands and thousands of fans don't come from that mindset. So I want to know, how does this kind of stuff affect you all, you as a person? You can't speak for everybody, but you as a
Of
person, as a
course.
journalist.
So I have to take a little bit of a step back initially with that and explain in like games journalism is very hard because there are a few angles and ways that you can approach it. There's the very basic way, which is basically being a feedback loop for PR. You're just feeding back the PR message. You get a press release, you feed that back out to the public. And we're just taking the information given to us and feeding it back out. And then on the other side of that, there's the, uh, the investigative stuff and the leaks and the things like that. But then there's also balancing that kind of stuff. Like, what is fair to leak? What is, people will say, well, it's your job as a games journalist to really dig into this stuff and to bring the public stuff that's not coming from the developers. But like, is that fair of me to come out and say, ruin the reveal of what somebody has worked a really long time on?
Yeah, that's
Is
that's
that
another
my
conversation.
job
Yeah,
to come in there and to leak something, to leak some secret or to leak some game? Um, where it's not very difficult on that is reporting on things like, conditions at studios and crunch and things like that. Like, I think that's very important, and that's a very important part of journalism, gaming journalism, is to paint a better picture of those things. What I don't think gaming journalism should do, and unfortunately we have to engage in some ways because those are the stories. I think just today I wrote up report Dead Space in development at EA Motive. If I had that information personally, I wouldn't be putting it out there. I wouldn't be the one to be putting it out on the table because it's not my place to reveal that creative work. If I'm working on something myself and I'm not ready to reveal it to the world yet, I don't want somebody else coming along and saying like, "Oh, Chandler's working on this novel and it's about this and this and this," and I'm like, "Great, thanks." Now
exactly.
put weird undue pressure on me or something like that. Like, so it's a difficult space there. But then I do agree where when you pull that back to having, just that kind of delivering the PR message and the press releases and things like that, and having to take them at their word for things, then if you've got this conspiracy where they are, if it is a case of them just outright lying to you, and we are being the mouthpiece for that message saying, oh, well, Blue Box Game Studios says that it's not Kojima and Abandoned. I agree. Like, that's not clever marketing. That's just straight up lying.
Yeah.
And then the game doesn't mean anything anymore because I think that was something else. I don't know if I wrote it into my piece as well as I kind of meant to, or if it was an afterthought that I kind of was mulling about later. But the idea that people know, quote unquote know, because obviously we don't know, but the idea that people think that they know that this is Silent Hills and Kojima makes you wonder, what's the end game then? Why are they continuing to play the game? Because the point of an ARG, the point of a game, is to go through those steps and through those breadcrumbs to find the solution.
Yeah.
And to ultimately locate the thing, the secret trailer. PT in and of itself being this thing that was like this mystery and it wasn't related to anything at all. And when people figured it out and unlocked the secret at the end, they unlocked that it was actually here, revealing this trailer for Silent Hills, which of course we know never came to be, or never came to be yet.
Yeah.
Who knows? But but yeah, looking at this, there just doesn't seem to be an end game for it. And the delay of the app further cements to me that this is not some grand scheme, because if they
Absolutely.
can meticulously plan out this grand scheme, supposedly over the course of since 2014 or whenever Blue Box was first formed, whenever they would have had to technically be starting to lay these breadcrumbs over the course of the last 6 years or so, 6 or 7 years, there's no way they get to the release date of this app and delay it by 2 months and don't
Yeah.
have that meticulously planned out as well.
Yep. And honestly, if this was Hideo Kojima, it wouldn't have been delayed at all.
No.
And it's just interesting through all this. And I get what you're saying. It actually it makes you all look dumb, because you write the piece and then you have to go back and be like, oh, never mind, that's not what it is actually, because they actually said it's actually this. So all of y'all look dumb, and
Yep.
it's their fault. and I totally get that point of view now, because as someone who's, like I said, I'm really taking this all in, and this is fun, and I'm like, man, I want all these news sites to just keep covering it, because I want to know any new thing that's coming up and here and there. But I get it when it comes to a point where, like, we just got to be done, and honestly, that's how you end off your entire thing. Which, sadly, here you are sitting down talking about it again. You kind of ended off like, I'm kind of done talking about this. I'm done leaving the madness of Blue Box Game Studios. So
Well, and I was happy, I think how I ended, what's my exact quote there on that last sentence?
I pressed the power button on my phone and rolled over to go to sleep, content to leave the madness of the Blue Box conspiracy behind me.
So yeah, and that's what I think, is that now I can talk about it from a point of not madness.
Yeah.
I know this is going to be something that I'm going to have to continue to cover, and that I'm going to, I shouldn't even say have to, that I get to continue to cover. I'm excited. I love covering ongoing stories and following up on things like this. And whenever I'm writing a story, and if I can ever link it back to something where I'm like, oh man, I remember writing about this linked aspect of it a little bit ago, and being able to hyperlink that in, like, that's my favorite thing to me, because again,
Yeah.
that's adding that context beyond just the press release that's being sent to me,
Right.
from that I can add more to the story. And that's really one of my big goals as a journalist, and as running the site and with my news writers and everything, is that that's really what I want to do. I want to give you as a reader, and everybody as readers, something that they're not going to get just from a news blast or on EA's own site, or on whoever's site. I wrote a few EA stories today, so that's on my mind.
Yeah.
And being able to provide that added context and that added kind of interlinking and web between stories that you're not going to get from just like press release being sent out to you.
Right.
So yeah, it's at this point, it's nice because I can sit down and talk about it without the madness of it, because right now we're not conspiracy theorizing over it, and we're not going, oh well, did you see the new thing that somebody just posted on the Blue Box conspiracy subreddit about how Hasan's picture? And I actually did end up going back eventually, and this was a week and a half, couple weeks after, so it was distanced and removed from it at least. But there's just some wild stuff that people are bringing up, and they're looking at his PSN profile picture that's on his PSN account, and they're like blowing it up and analyzing the pixels and being like, this is edited and it's a weird angle, and why is he at this weird angle? And it's like, well, there are a million and one reasons it can be, but you're choosing the one reason, which is that this is all a conspiracy for Silent Hills and Kojima.
That fits the narrative. That's what you're choosing.
Yeah, like I mentioned in that piece again, confirmation bias. That's all it is. When you go in with this predetermined conclusion, you're not trying to solve a puzzle. You're trying to make the pieces you have fit the puzzle you feel like you've already solved.
Right. And a couple more things I want to pick your brain on is, and without going too deep into this, we've seen these recent stories coming up about indie devs talking about how it's already hard for them to actually, for PlayStation to play nice and to want to elevate these smaller developers. And so we see something like this Blue Box Game Studios failed Kickstarter. You cover that in your article, which, by the way, anyone who's listening, please go read it. It's on PlayStation Lifestyle. It goes by the name None of It Matters: The Schrodinger's Madness of the Blue Box Conspiracy. So go read that if you have a chance. You kind of go
Oh
over that a
yeah,
little
because I
bit.
mentioned all the Schrodinger's box stuff
Yes,
and how it's, it's in this quantum state of both being and not being what
exactly.
this is. And
Exactly. And so we're seeing these things from some indie devs, already hard for them to be pushed by PlayStation. And so we have this Blue Box Game Studios failed Kickstarter, really has not much shown for what Hasan has made as an individual or the studio has made as a whole. They already have connections to these bigger outsourcing companies that are helping them out with this project. And they've actually had one of them come out and speak about it. I believe the names were like Dekogon and Noir or
yeah,
Nuer.
New Air or something. I'm not sure how you pronounce it.
Right. And those companies have worked on huge games. Death Stranding being one of them. Don't be making any kind of connections. Death Stranding being one of them. Call of Duty. All these kinds of things. They're not cheap. These are expensive companies, I'm sure, to work with because they have high caliber. So for PlayStation to put them on this blog to promote them, this nobody, how much do you think PlayStation has involved in this whole thing? Should they have actually come out and actually said something? Do you think by now, if there was some sort of connection between the two of them in the background, they probably cut ties? What do you think?
Well, I look at the Cyberpunk scenario
Mm,
for if you want to look at how PlayStation handles its relationships with developers,
yeah, yeah,
when something comes up. And Cyberpunk getting dropped from the PlayStation Store was it was they weren't going to take nothing from anybody, and
huge.
that was enormous. And a lot of people, I maintained the entire time that the removal from the PlayStation Store had nothing to do with the quality of the game, because there
Mm.
are lots of crappy games on the PlayStation Store
Life of Black
that
Tiger.
stay up. That's exactly the example. Yep, Life of Black Tiger. That's the one that always comes up, right?
Yeah,
If a game like Life of Black Tiger can be put on the PlayStation Store and stay on the PlayStation Store and not have a bar of quality that it needs to be removed, then PlayStation itself does not have a bar of quality for your games. You can release whatever you want on the
yeah,
PlayStation Store within their agreements and everything, but a quality bar is not one of them.
right.
Um, so the reason it was removed, in my eyes and the way that I see this whole thing going down, was because uh, of how CD Projekt Red handled the refund scenario and handled the marketing around it and everything, and kind of threw Sony under the bus, and that there was a lot of misleading things around it. And that was further proved to me because the game came back almost exactly 6 months. I think it was 6 months and 1 day. And the only
Mm.
reason it was and 1 day was because it's a Tuesday, and Tuesdays are kind of the typical PlayStation Store update days.
Right, right.
So I believe that it was just a 6 month penalty, and that it was always a 6 month penalty.
Yeah,
From the beginning, it was always a 6 month penalty of your games getting removed from our store because of how you handled this. You broke contractual agreements. What those contractual agreements were, I have no idea. But it really feels to me like that was like a breaking of an agreement there.
yeah,
So, going back to Blue Box and all of this, they've said before, one of the things that they've specifically said is we can't talk about the level of our partnership with Sony right now because of some contractual agreements or something like that. Like, they were
yeah,
really secretive around that. And
yeah.
who knows whether that was them just saying something or to kind of hype it up a little bit, because in some
Right,
ways, in that article I did write too that the way they've handled things reminds me of an old friend that I had who was a chronic liar
right,
and a
right.
chronic over exaggerator, and somebody who he was charming. He was a really, really nice, super, super charming guy, and you almost had no choice but to believe him. And I was friends with him for years, despite constantly again and again him proving these lies and everything to me that were just like, wow, dude, like, thought for 6 months you owned this company that actually doesn't exist, and like that type of stuff that's just so wild and so out there. And it feels a lot like the same thing here, where there's a lot of over exaggeration. There's a lot of lofty promises and lofty goals that I honestly believe, this isn't an attack on Hasan's character or anything like that, but I honestly believe these are things that he wants to meet himself,
Right.
but that he's a lot of talk and just doesn't end up being able to deliver on any of those things, as you
Right.
find the failed Kickstarter and the early access game that then gets handed off to some other unknown publisher supposedly, but also isn't being finished through them somehow. And that, just all these unfinished projects and ideas that come along. And then Abandon itself being announced as this like asset flip game, that looks like, I think people proved that it's actually just using a bunch of pre-done Unreal Engine assets.
Okay.
That trailer that was initially launched.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you have to wonder, okay, all right, a lot of people can put that onto the conspiracy. Well, it's part of the conspiracy. Or it's this guy who wants to make these really big promises and thinks that he's going to make the next great survival horror game, just like every other studio that's out there making survival horror games. And he probably had some idea that he pitched to Sony that was, they were like, all right, this sounds like a really good idea. This is really interesting. I like your thoughts on this. More than likely, maybe it was that trailers app. Maybe he thought, how about this really cool thing? What if I develop this app that's my game running in real time, and that's how people can see the game? And they were like, okay, cool, And then the question becomes, well, okay, to what level is Sony involved in that? Was it just kind of greenlighting the idea and going, okay, that's cool, go ahead. Yeah, you agree to an exclusivity period of 6 months or something on that, because he said also that it's definitely coming to PC.
Mm-hmm.
So we know that it's not strictly a PlayStation exclusive. PlayStation itself has never said anything about the game.
Yeah.
It was on the PlayStation blog.
Right.
But the blog post was written by him.
Yeah.
PlayStation itself has never said a word about the game. So that's the biggest thing, and I see a lot of people debating that about like, well, shouldn't have Sony have come out and said something, but you almost wonder if that's going to do more damage if Sony acknowledges it, because then it says, oh, this is big enough for Sony to come out and acknowledge it. And to me, Sony not acknowledging it is almost going like, well, okay, it's this little indie guy who's just saying whatever he wants to say, and it's not even important enough for Sony to say a word about.
Right. That's very interesting. Do you think, and again, we don't know. We're not, there's no more conspirizing anymore. There's just Silent Hill or anything like that. I think this is done. This is not what this is.
Especially with Bloober now being partnered with Konami and almost being confirmed to be doing Silent Hill. Like, that part of it wasn't confirmed, but what else are they working on, right?
Right. And I honestly think also the rumors that Jeff Grubb actually just put out today about Kojima doing something possibly with Xbox. I think Kojima's doing so much right now. I don't know if he's working on Silent Hill, guys. He's doing a lot right now, And
Death Stranding director's cut.
Exactly.
Potentially, I think he's also working on another game for PlayStation. Like it feels like he's not just going to totally leave PlayStation behind, but then inking this potential deal with Microsoft. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah. And so, do you think, let's say, Abandon is released? Can you see this going? And again, we're just conspirizing. Can you see this either going? It just completely gets shut down. Do you think this has the possibility of probably being a No Man's Sky situation? Because I feel like the common threads is there was overpromising. Sean Murray for No Man's Sky, which is an amazing game now. They've completely did a whole 180 on the game. It is one of the nicest looking games in my opinion. It's just full of wonder. But that took years. That took years. And at the beginning, they sure weren't getting that. They got a lot of hate. Do you think there's a potential for this to possibly go on No Man's Sky route? Or do you think because of the craziness of the fanboys wanting this one thing, when they're not going to be given that one thing, they're just going to completely just want to just just finish it, no more, because No Man's Sky wasn't tied to some previous humongous IP. It was just a new IP, overpromise on that IP, but then they kind of fulfilled that over the years, silently
Yeah.
behind the scenes. This was something that's riding off of the theories of Silent Hill. We're not going to get it. Do you see the potential of this even surviving at the end of all this?
So I've wondered if Abandon will even ever end up actually releasing. Because again, there's the question of, we don't know anybody else that works at Blue Box Game Studios.
No.
We do know technically that they are working with outsourcing studios in some capacity, and in some
Right.
cases, when you look into like what Nuer, if that's how you say it, what they've done for some of these other studios, like, okay, yes, they've worked on this big game, and then you look into the details of what they worked on, and it's like, oh, they did the cover art for the game.
Mm.
Oh, they worked on Destiny 2. Oh, well, they did one of the Destiny 2 advertising cinematics back in the day. So, there's that level of collaboration with some of these studios that, you wonder to what level are they actually working on this game and collaborating on this game with them. And then, yeah, is it more than just Hasan working on this game? Who else is at Blue Box Game Studios? You'd think there would be some level of pride, or maybe at this point they're just protecting themselves because they're like, all right, I don't want to get involved in whatever this insane conspiracy is.
Yeah.
Or it's just Hasan, and again, it's one of those over-promising things and kind of saying, oh yeah, there's people at Blue Box. It's this big studio, and it's really just him trying to like throw this game together himself, this dream that he has of this big survival horror game. So I have to wonder if, after a trailers app, an app that is for generating trailers in real time, and the trailers weren't even going to launch in the app when the app itself launched on, what was it, June 20th at first, and then 22nd.
Yes.
So it was supposed to be June 20th with a trailer, and then it was June 20th without a trailer, and then it was June 22nd without a trailer. And now the app is just pushed all the way into August. And it's like, if you can't even get an app that's just supposed to render trailers for us out the door with any kind of reliability, I have to wonder what your ability to actually bring us a full game really is.
Yeah.
I'm rooting for him. I really am. I'm rooting for the underdog. I want to believe that he can actually put something together, and there's that I want to believe again, but it's not in the conspiracy this time. I just want to believe in the guy, and I want him to have a win. He seems like a nice enough guy, and I believe everybody deserves that shot, and especially in the face of kind of everything he's received at this point. If and when it does end up actually releasing and coming out, and it is just Abandoned, and it's whatever this survival horror game is, I mean, a lot of that's going to depend on what the game actually ends up being. If there's anything particularly unique about it, or if it is just another first-person survival horror game that's copying from the, last 5 years of the Outlasts of the world, the Bloober Team games of the world, all of those just overwhelming survival horror experiences we've seen. I do think we've seen a lot of support for him and for people where you look into the conspiracy threads and stuff, and there will be some extra threads that are saying like, hey guys, just in case, with our expectations set, if this isn't a thing, if this is just Abandoned, like, let's support this guy. Let's not let that impact things. And so I would hope that would also carry over, but it's really hard to tell with the internet because there's so often that it's this, some issue will be just this vocal minority. It's just a few people just talking about this thing, and they blow it out of proportion, and then in practice what ends up coming out is not an issue at all.
Right.
And that happens so often in games. We see it all the time, and unfortunately we as journalists cover that kind of stuff because that's what we see right on the internet.
Absolutely.
And then it ends up just being this tiny thing that we can amplify, and the internet itself, the nature of the internet can amplify. And but no, I'd hope it would do well,
All right.
or at
Awesome.
least be given a shot.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, I think that's a great way to kind of end this all. I think perfectly. You kind of summarized it all. Uh, Most definitely. I think you can agree. We're gonna try this whenever it does come out. I'm for sure
Oh
gonna
yeah,
give it a shot, and I agree with you. I wanna help the underdog. I want to help small developers because I personally one day I want to make a game one day, and to understand that somebody has this dream to make a video game. Maybe he messed up on the way, but I do agree. I want to support them. I want to see them. I want to see them flourish. I want to see them actually. Okay, you messed up once, but who knows? Maybe 10 years from now, Hasan is probably better than Hideo Kojima. We don't know, but until then, we gotta give him a chance. And so, Chandler Wood, I appreciate you, man, jumping on and talking to me about all things Blue Box conspiracy and going over this whole the madness of it all. Those watching, please go check out Chandler Wood, the editor in chief of PlayStation Lifestyle. Check out the website. Catch up. Follow them on Twitter to get all your PlayStation news and stuff like that. And again, man, thank you for jumping on. I appreciate it.
thank you for having me.
Where can people find you on Twitter?
I'm on Twitter at Finch Strife. So Finch like the bird, Strife like Cloud Strife.
Cool.
And then PlayStation Lifestyle is at PS Lifestyle.
Awesome. And I'll have all those links in the summary below. So anyways, thanks for watching, guys. Chandler, thanks for being here, man. Until next time,